Action item number 1, approve a request from AT&T to add 3 new 10-foot panel antennas to existing communication tower on fire district property. And I believe that we have a representative from Lyle and Company in attendance tonight.
Do I need to stand, or I'm not sure what the protocol is? Okay, well, I've brought a few of the revised EMF reports. I'm not sure. I have 9 that I can share.
The board needs to have them to.
Oh, sorry. Did you want to see?
We can, yeah, we can share them.
It leaves me with 3 extras if anyone wants to read along while I try to explain some things. Would anyone else like one? So it was our understanding from the last meeting that there was some concern about the location of this facility in proximity to some of what we would consider sensitive receptors, playgrounds and the ball fields and things like that. Right, I believe, let me make sure that that was addressed as well, but I believe it was.
It was. He came here and measured.
I'm not sure. I think it would be easiest, and if anyone has any questions, you could please stop me. But to go, if you're going by the pages in the bottom right-hand corner, just briefly on page 3, part of these reports that are required, by the FCC measure the exposures in 2 categories. What they call occupational, which is, like it sounds, the limits of exposure for people who are actually doing the work, our technicians, people who actually climb these poles, etc. And the more concerning one, I believe, is the general public. There's certain levels for people just being in close proximity in, around, or near these towers. So that's sort of the breakout and how this report reads. On page 4, there's a table that's not the easiest to read, but this is essentially how the FCC has required these EMF reports be taken into consideration for those 2 limits, for the occupational and the public exposure. The easiest thing would be, the purpose of this report was, actually going out and field studying and doing a predictive modeling of the worst case exposure from the existing, and then also what we're proposing to add to this tower. So on page 6, on the 3rd paragraph from the bottom, it basically breaks down in a percentage those proposed or those estimated limits of exposure from the modification. Page 7 goes into sort of what is required in terms of signage that be posted in, around, or near these towers to say essentially that there are some notices and cautions that people should take into account when they're near them. I think the easiest thing, and if everyone can hopefully get back to it, the 6th page from the back is where it breaks down into a percentage, and it uses an aerial photo of the site and the nearby areas. So this is the picture that I'm referring to. It says site plan with monitoring results here. I think it's towards the back. Okay, so you're getting closer. Were you able to find that page?
Which page?
I think if you keep turning towards the end, or actually, I take a bit.
It's the 5th one.
It's that, the one I think it has an aerial photo. So this is, I think, the easiest way just to break down when they did field surveys. You'll see in a somewhat hard to read, but these very light blue numbers with corresponding single and double letters. And these are the percentages that they took and their estimations of when or if this modification were to take place. These are the percentages of that threshold that you would find. So for example, near the westernmost baseball field, there's a point Z, which reads, it's kind of hard to read with the contrast, but 0.00 0.006, which would be 0.006% of that threshold. The highest levels you can find would be towards where it says fire station itself. There's a point B, which is below the playground. That's 8.330%. So, according to this report that they ran, that would be near the most percent of that threshold, which is about 8%, which is well below the threshold that the FCC has presented. So, if there's any specific questions about any part of that, but that's essentially the conclusion that this report found. Or, I'm not sure if there's a format for that. Or
It would be good if people have questions to raise your hand and we'll recognize it. The question that comes to my mind immediately is in this report, is it delineated what these results, how these results compare to the existing? Or is this existing?
The report was generated based on the drawings that we provided to the radio engineering company to say, this is, go out, do your field survey to verify what equipment is on that tower, and then given our drawings of saying we propose to add those 3 additional antennas, these are the results of that, assuming those antennas are on the tower running at full capacity.
Do we also have comparable numbers not including that assumption so that we can compare what we have right now?
The way that we requested this report be run is not necessarily a before-after. However, if that's something you would like to see, I think we can have them based on the readings they took, just to say it's 8 point, for example, you just want to know if it was 2 or 6 or something. Is that what you're saying?
We're trying to establish it.
Sort of a...
where we are today.
Okay.
Pre-request.
Okay.
The correspondence I had with Lyle and Company when I sent the letter after the last meeting specifically requested existing and proposed levels, so which the county did as well, frankly. It was the same requirement Marin County zoning had. Existing and proposed composite levels of RF exposure based on actual measured levels. Identify the measurement device used. Indicate distances, which we've got, for exposure levels for a person on the ground, including playground, station, and clinic.
Mary Beth?
I'm also wondering if, are these numbers reflecting the maximum permissible exposure percentage of the MPE on here? That's what that is?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so that's averaged over 6 minutes or 30 minutes exposure.
Right.
Right.
That was, yeah.
Okay, so
You're right.
so
It's
this
6
is-
minutes, 6 minutes for occupation.
So in
30
6 minutes,
for
you would
public.
be at such and such an exposure percentage of the maximum allowable exposure. And then, but it's, the maximum number you've got here is for 30 minutes exposure, right?
Right.
Okay.
It says for the general population.
Uncontrolled
On
areas.
this,
Uncontrolled, but that means, doesn't that mean that after 30 minutes, you would have to add some more exposure?
Are you I'm trying to understand your question. So you're wondering if you were there for longer than 30 minutes, if that level...
Right.
I mean, the way these studies are ran, it's just to... I mean, that time period is what's required to come up with the study to say, for example, when you do any type of time delay study, whether if it's traffic or if it's noise, you kind of have to... They establish a set period of time under which you make that measurement. So you can say, for example, in building construction, they have like a fastest mile over a specific distance. If we do noise studies to see if our generators make noise, we do it over a time delay. It's the methodology in which you can then predict the exposure. So that's just the industry standard for coming up with that period of time to which you can then make these percentage readouts.
Right. But if you were there a longer period of time than that 30 minutes, it would be additive to that percentage of the allowable permitted exposure, right?
That's not my understanding.
Why wouldn't it be?
It's a situation where I'm not trying to discount your question, but I'm just trying to, my understanding of the methodology for that is the reading, that percentage, if you stood there, it doesn't become, this 8% doesn't become 100% if you stayed there for more than 3 minutes or 6 minutes or 30
Why
minutes.
not?
That is the nature of the radio frequency emissions. It's a percentage exposure. Well, ma'am, that is the understanding, and that is how the reports are based on.
I know when you put a piece of, like a potato into a microwave oven, the longer it's in the presence of the microwaves, the more it's cooked.
It's not the same thing. They're radio frequencies. They operate at completely different frequencies. The counterexample would be your cereal next to the microwave doesn't cook. Or, I'm just trying to, by your analogy, it's not the same.
Because it's not the same frequencies?
Right, because, a radio wave is completely different. In the spectrum of radio frequencies, different things do different things. A microwave, by its nature, is not a cellular antenna.
Well, I'll
Yes.
Just to understand this a little more clearly, if the figures for a 6-minute exposure are different than the figures for the 30-minute exposure, because this is what I'm understanding, that the 6-minute exposure figures would be different, or are they the same as the 30-minute?
I believe the difference.
Because if they are different, then logically, a 1-hour exposure would be different than a 30-minute exposure. If they're the same, then what you're saying makes sense to me, but otherwise it doesn't.
I think to answer your question, it's the difference between what they do to determine an occupational versus public exposure. It's not necessarily to say you generate a public exposure at 6 minutes, but it's not, to answer your question, that's not the case. The 6-minute versus the 30-minute is the methodology to determine the thresholds for occupational and general public limit.
Do you know if, I'm looking at the table on page 6, would that have been the same standard in place, I don't know when this issue came up, 4, 5, 6 years?
2002, I think, is one of the earliest we really
So
started.
9 years ago. Do you know, would this be the same? What I'm looking for is how comparable are these numbers to what
From the
measured-
federal when the act was
what was
enacted.
measured then, yes.
I do not know that definitively to say without a shadow of a doubt.
I think that would be useful to know if there's a way that you can, if you can research that.
Sure.
And then the other thing that I think what I'm picking up is, and I don't know, maybe people here already know this, I don't know if you boil water and you keep putting heat into it, it peaks out at 212 degrees. I don't know if microwaves are cumulative or if you're saturated,
They are.
it hits a steady state.
It's cumulative.
So I'd like to know that as well, hear what your thoughts are about what the thinking is on that.
A microwave oven is a specific frequency that agitates the water molecule, which is why something that's dry does not cook. And it's kind of not necessarily valid allegory as far as compared to the spectrum range of which this is referring, is my understanding.
Seems to me that the scientific information is not necessarily where our focus should be. The questions that I have relate more to what is the value of adding these antennae to the firehouse. Do you get an increased monetary reward for allowing this to happen? What is the benefit to AT&T? Do they get increased cell phone coverage? Do they get their new 3G, 4G network in place, etc.? So there's a sort of a bottom line financial aspect to the question, and the primary concern that I have is that it seems to me that a mistake was made some years ago in allowing this technology to be placed here in proximity to a children's playground and the clinic at a time when I don't think either of them actually existed, so they've come in later. But that our concern now is that we not increase any potential dangers, because there will always be disagreement on the precise levels or the methodology of measuring what's going on, and different standards, different scales, different agreements on whether X amount is harmful or Y amount is harmful or whatever. I think it is generally understood that any amount can be harmful over a period of time. The question is whether, if it's a huge financial benefit to the fire department and by extension the town, because to have a better fire department is to have a better town, then that could be a prime consideration. If it's simply something that's of benefit to AT&T and no particular health or financial benefit to the town, then that gives another way of measuring what's going on.
There's also a question of the contract that we have with AT&T.
Exactly.
And
So you have to honor
we're-
the existing contract.
We're not unconstrained in
Exactly, I understand that, and that's not the problem as far as I'm concerned. You have an existing contract, and the question is, what is this addition about, and what is it worth to either you or them?
I'm not really sure that's relevant to where we're at with the discussion tonight. I feel like we were going to be able to move forward tonight because we were going to have very clear numbers in front of us about current EMF levels and what the proposed addition of the 3 antennas was going to cause, what kind of a change would that cause, if any. And apparently we don't have that information, so I'm not sure we have any basis for taking any action on this tonight.
We could, though, if you don't mind. I mean, we can't answer that. There's zero financial benefit for the district. The contract stays the same. It's a technological modification for AT&T.
Okay.
It doesn't change our contract at all.
Well, can you discuss what the contract says in terms of AT&T allowing co-location on their tower?
Well, co-location is a different issue than what this request is.
Correct.
This is a request to modify the way the lease reads right now, and since 1997 it's been the same. Any modifications from the original plans that were put forth with that lease need to be approved by the district as the property owner. That request, the request for a modification, cannot be unreasonably or unduly withheld. Now, whatever that means, that's the discussion, but that's basically, it's a paragraph 2C that speaks to that. Any modifications need to be approved by us, and we cannot unduly withhold or unreasonably withhold that approval. I don't know, what that plays out as, if the district says no to it. I mean, Jonathan, can you speak to the addition of the 3 antennas? Why?
As part of AT&T's maintenance of their network, this is what they consider to be a very routine modification that they are in the process of or have completed across the country. I mean, to answer an earlier question, this is to maintain their 3G network, which is essentially voice and data and things like that. But every lease agreement is different, so we definitely won't speak to that. But it was my understanding earlier in this process, when we contacted the fire district, one of our representatives had sent, I believe it was to your office, basically a letter to stipulate what are we doing, and that the district consents to us obtaining permits. Was that okay? Then I
never.
Or would they give you notice?
I have the file here.
Okay.
And the only notice that I got was the original request for a signature on the zoning application.
Okay.
So that was
Probably then the reason something like that would transpire is if in their review of the lease that they are allowed to make certain modifications based on when that lease was enacted.
They definitely handled it very routinely. In fact, I didn't get a request from them to sign the zoning application until after we had received the plans to review it, and that's when I responded back saying we wouldn't be able to do that on an operational level. Only after that did I receive the request for the signature for the zoning application.
When you say the zoning application, you're referring to the use permit?
Correct.
That's required because, can I just clarify one thing? The addition of the 3 panel antennas has no relationship. It has only to do with an upgrade to AT&T's facilities. It does not create the ability for them to co-locate other carriers on the tower.
Correct.
That's a completely separate issue.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Bob?
Yeah. I agree with you, Phil, that the action or this item becomes unactionable until we can measure what was specifically requested, comparing existing to proposed levels. And that seems to be one basic criteria. But the other, I think, more important criteria for us to consider, and I don't think there are any seated members of the board now that went through this with us around the Mura debacle. But at that time, I took great confidence, and I think the board did too, in listening to the research rulings and then determination by the International Association of Firefighters Division of Occupational Safety, etc., etc. This is an organization that represents somewhere between 250,000 and 500,000 firefighters in Canada and the United States. And if you didn't get it in your packet today, I checked in with them again this afternoon to find out if their ruling against siting antennas and towers on fire buildings across the country and in Canada had changed. And Jim Brinkley, who's the Director of Occupational Health and Safety of the IAFF, responded to me, Mr. Levitt, I have attached a PDF file that explains the IAFF's position on cell phone tower locations, which states, and then if you don't have it, basically he states that no, it's the same as it was in the Mira time. They are against it. They will not allow these installations on fire buildings because, well, I'll just read it to you briefly. The IAFF position on locating cell towers, commercial wireless infrastructure, on fire department facilities as adapted by its membership in August 2004 is that the IAFF opposed the use of fire stations as base stations for towers and/or antennas for the conduction of cell phone transmissions until a study with the highest scientific merit and integrity on health effects of exposure to low-intensity RFMW radiation is conducted, and it is proven that such sightings are not hazardous to the health of our members. Specifically, they're talking about firefighters, not public. We're talking here about firefighters and public. Jim finishes his answer to me on what's happening presently with this paragraph. Until there is a longitudinal study with a robust pool of participants that proves our members are not at an increased risk from low-intensity RF MVV radiation, the safest approach for our members is to oppose the use of fire stations as locations for these towers. As you will see in the conclusion of this document, the document on their full study, the leading organization researching the effects of low-intensity RFMW radiation recommends, quote, prudent avoidance, unquote, until the effects are known. The science that the gentleman was addressing in his general remarks to you is not only in question. There are presently 6 states in this union that are suing the federal government to revoke the questionable standards that the science that AT&T is basing their marketing strategies upon. There's suits in place that are trying to say, wait a minute, you guys, this science is bunk. And so it's taken the IAFF and their many hundreds of thousands of dollars of budget capacity to run a study, which is available, it's in Anita's files for sure, to run a study that says, okay, granted, we cannot prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the science is bunk, but increasingly, all the research shows us that there is potential danger, and therefore we take the position as a national organization against sightings. So I'm hoping, as I answered to him in my thank you back, that I will, I pre-thank you for your cricket, and I'll share the answer with the directors of our fire district at tonight's board meeting. I know we all appreciate the careful attention, and blah, blah, blah. And, well, just, I'm hoping that that this provides our district directors a clear and trustworthy basis for their own decisions and policy making here in Bolinas, California. That's what my hope is. So I say to you, directors here who I haven't spoken to about this matter before, please, please do not put this community at risk because of some undeserved confidence you have in the standards being used by AT&T and their marketeers, please, and please give careful consideration to the IAFF. Please call Mike, talk to him, and don't make some action based upon some pro forma confidence that's undeserved. Please. Thank you very much.
Yes, Rachel.
Okay. I just wanted to bring this up because it goes right along with what Bob's talking about. A group of international scientists put out a statement. This was a press release that I got February 3rd, 2011, just earlier this month. So a group of scientists in Sweden from the Karolinska Institute, which is behind the Nobel Prize, have put out the Celoton scientific statement. And they're basically, they're asking for new safety standards. They're saying that the safety standards used internationally are completely wrong now. And that we really need to look at, and specifically because the exposures currently used may be harming the development of children at levels now commonly found in the environment. Pregnant women are cautioned to avoid using wireless devices themselves and distance themselves from other users. The combined effect of cell phones, cordless phones, cell towers, Wi-Fi, and wireless internet place billions of people around the world at risk for cancer, neurological disease, and reproductive and developmental impairments. We are already seeing increases in health problems such as cancer and neurobehavioral impairments, even though these wireless technologies are fairly new in the last decades or so for the general public. This finding suggests that the exposures are already too high to protect people from health harm. Evidence suggests there are special risks for persons with occupational exposures to RF. Safety standards also ignore the developing fetus and young children who are more affected. I mean, I could go on and read more of this, but I think, you get the idea that basically international scientists who are the people studying this, independent of, the industry that's promoting it. These are people doing the independent studies, and they're saying the exposure levels that we're, currently accepting are totally off, and we have to look at, to rethink it completely. And the most dangerous to children. So, okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
I appreciate that the board is in a very difficult position because of the federal law saying you can't even take into consideration safety issues. It's sort of like a stacked deck. And there's this contract that was, 15 or whatever it is, 14 years old. But it seems like there is no advantage to the Bolinas Fire Department to go along with this. Right? Other than the AT&T will say, well, we'll sue you then. I mean, that's what this organization that this gentleman is representing, I mean, that's the hammer that everybody be worried about. Why should we go along with it? Well, it's more than just a routine modification. I mean, those are words invented by non-scientists, those words. They're invented by political activists with AT&T. And it doesn't seem that there's no reason to accept this request, because it seems like an open-ended thing. 5 years from now, they're going to say, well, we want 3 more, and they'll add this burden of radiation, microwave radiation, but don't worry, it's still within limits. It seems like an open-ended thing, and we're just this little town against one of the biggest entities on the planet. And it doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem like a fair fight, but I don't think we should go along with them, and they should just accept that. And if they don't accept that, they should take their damn tower down and just leave our town and find a new place. Or they're going to sue. And so is that the reason why we're going to go along with it? Because we're afraid of a suit from one of the very large entity. And it seems that's really the underlying thing, is we get no benefit, and we're just afraid we'll be sued if we don't go along. That doesn't seem like the Bolinas model to me. So I hope you don't approve this.
When you say approve, you're,
Approved.
when you use that word approve, are you talking about the proposal itself or us merely allowing the process to go to
Yeah.
the planning department?
I don't know what your process is, and I'm not sure of the exact process, but I'm saying, I don't understand why there's no benefit to the people of Bolinas, to this fire department, to accept these additional panels. And one interpretation, which I think should be looked at, that, oh, they're allowed to do this based on their language, that it's just routine modification. That, I think, needs to be explored. I think that it shouldn't be approved, the 3 panels, you know, with all due respect to AT&T and this gentleman, that no, we don't want. And now what are you going to say? Are you going to say you're going to sue us? So it'd be just nice to know, like, what's the game that's being played? Is that what they're going to say to us? And it would be nice to know that. Let's have that conversation. If we don't go along with them on these 3 panels, they're going to sue the tiny district of Bolinas because there are children playing in this area and people have just normal human legitimate concerns about young people. And I have concerns about the staff of your fire department and the staff of the clinic because they're here all the time. And I think it's unfair for us to put those human beings in that position. And it's only because of a fear of AT&T, it sounds like to me. Because why would we do it for nothing? If they paid us $1 million, well, okay, then we'll have scholarships for the kids or something, but it doesn't seem like there's any benefit.
Well, I think most people in this room share your concerns, even if they can't put it down in black and white about specifically what's concerning themselves. But I feel like we're maybe getting a couple of steps ahead of ourselves because what we're considering is whether we sign an application for a change in their use permit. And that signature on that application triggers an entire higher level process that's going to happen at the county planning department in which they're also requesting the same kind of information that we're after. And we have already said that we can't sign the use permit application until we see clear numbers of existing EMF levels and projected EMF levels for the addition of the 3 panels. And it seems to me, based on the aerial photo in the back, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, but the projections for the percentage of MPE that would prevail after the addition of the 3 panels, they couldn't have developed those projections without a measurement of the existing radiation, could they?
Based on the type of test that was requested, specifically these ground level readings, yes, you're right, they would have that information.
So that would be fairly easy for Lyle and Company to get that information to us in time for our next meeting.
I believe so.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Well, then if you sign this document that you referred to, then who makes the decision whether they exist or not? Somebody in the county or somebody here sitting in front of us now?
What's your question? Who makes
If you sign this application that triggers this process, who then makes the decision whether they shall be added or not added to the tower?
Correct me if I'm wrong about this, Anita, but as the property owner, we have the final say-so on this, don't we, in terms of whether we accept the use permit, or is it out of our hands once the county takes up the issue of the use permit?
I can't answer that.
I
don't know if we sign this as the property owner and it goes through the process, if it comes back to us again or not. I don't know.
We'll be good to know that.
Yeah.
Meredith?
I did speak with the Planning Commission just this morning about this, and they explained to me, a woman named
The
Maureen Lee.
planning commission or someone in the planning department?
The woman who was in charge of this kind of permitting process.
The reason I asked Mary Beth is when you say planning commission, I'm thinking of the 7 planning commissioners that represent the.
Right.
You're talking about a staff
This
member,
was
right?
the subdivision within the department that deals with these permits. Lorraine Jackson, she's the planner handling this specific project. And what she explained to me is that you, as the property owners, once you sign the permit application, that's sort of like giving your permission, and that gives, then they review it, but and they make a decision, but they can't go forward with that permit application if you decide not to sign it. And so there's nothing preventing you from not signing it, according to Lorraine Jackson. She said it's entirely up to you as the property owners. But once you give them that...
She doesn't know about our contract with AT&T, though, and it says we can't unreasonably withhold.
Well, you have a contract with the community, too. And what would be an unreasonable abrogation of that to protect us from an incredible increase in radiation, because that's what this is, a very, very large increase in radiation. That's why they need this for the 4G, the 3G, and 4G. It doesn't operate, it needs more bandwidth, it needs more frequencies.
So just to kind of explain the process that we typically go through, in a county or a city, any type of planning department, they certainly have certain applications. And as the agent for AT&T, we typically say we are authorized under a lease, or we obtain a letter of authorization from a landlord if it's a private party or a fire protection district, what have you. And then we assume the role as the applicant for these applications, meaning we're responsible for the finances, we're responsible for any what they consider conditions of approval, and take these projects through the process. The request in the application that is before you is a request on behalf of the Marin County Planning Department that they would prefer that the fire protection district be an applicant alongside the Lyle company, so that you are made known for any long-term maintenance conditions. For example, if they require us to paint the pole, if they require new trees or bushes, or any number of conditions that possibly could be a requirement to obtain the approval, then you're made known for it, so that any long-term maintenance can be made known to you. And so, in terms of the approval process, I think Lorraine Jackson is the planner that's been assigned this application. By you signing this application doesn't approve it from the county standpoint. It simply says that you are now aware and acknowledge that this is the application that they will be routing through their own county general plan policies, design guidelines, their own regulations and rules. And upon them concurring that it meets their guidelines, they can approve it. Now, the process is with these planning entitlements, there are appeal processes that can go. If it is approved by their staff, it can be approved. It can be appealed to their planning commission, their county boards of supervisors, etc. So the signing of the application is, you're right, it's the very first step in a litany of commissions and boards that have authority to grant, deny that application.
Well, yeah, I would like to characterize that completely differently. It's a demonstrated fact. I've witnessed it myself at the Planning Commission in Marin County, that once you enjoin yourself as an applicant to this process, they, in their governmental status, are prohibited by the Telecommunications Act from any of the reasonable precautionary steps that we, as a community, as a landowner, have the right to take. The reason that we have that right, that the district has that right now, is because this is private public property, and you have a contract that gives permission for its use to these parties. Once it gets signed over to the government issuing process, that's when the Telecommunications Act kicks in. But it doesn't exist here under your rights as a property owner. Phil, I understand your concern about the contract, but I think that once we get some honest, clear data from the applicant here about what the percentage of increase is, I think, and why it is needed, I think you'll find that it's needed to transmit more what's called hard data. Not just voice, it's now we're going to provide everybody with more internet stuff on their cell phones. Nonsense when you measure it against precautionary values for the health of a community. So I think once you see what the hard data is, I think I hope you'll be able to make a case back to this applicant to say, we're sorry. The percentage at present, the increase in the percentage at present is of deep concern to us and the community, and in the future, increasing other percentages, just something we don't want to get into. Thank you very much. We're happy with our present level, but we do not accept this request for additional antennas. I think you're going to feel, especially if you check with the IAFF and get their studied 10-year basis for this, I think you're going to feel that that's really fulfilling your obligation as the district's board.
Well, we are already on record as being unwilling to sign off on anything that increases the current levels.
Great.
Even though we don't know what's going on.
You've definitely given me something to think about when, in so many words, you're saying that if we permit the application process to go forward, we have had our last opportunity
Absolutely.
to influence this. And I'm not convinced that that's true. I would like to, have a legal opinion on that before I banked on it.
Just as a note, I heard county council make a speech. He was practically teary-eyed. The county council said to the planning commission, in front of my own eyes and ears, I wish I could tell you otherwise, but ladies and gentlemen, you are prohibited. You can hear these people speak, but you are prohibited by law from including their testimony in your consideration of this application. That was almost verbatim the words of county council to the planning commission. So, granted, of course you should have a legal opinion. Don't take my word for it, Phil, but I've seen it. And it's diabolical, and this gentleman may dangle a bunch of process, but once it's out of our hands, it's gone, and it's their game.
Well, a question for David.
Donna.
Does AT&T presently have an omnidirectional antenna on the pole? They have Verizon listed as an omnidirectional, and these specifications refer to the later cell structure, which is directional. And that was a question as to whether your measurements are reflected on a omnidirectional antenna. That's what's presently there.
I'm just nodding following your question.
Question.
Typically, these panel antennas go by sectors and azimuths, so they project in specific what they call sectors.
Okay.
And so that's why they took the measurement readings that they showed on that page.
And so those antennas are not yet installed. And so what was those measurements actually reflecting? And that's why I asked about an omnidirectional antenna. I mean, whose signal was it? Was it other signals, or and your testing device was reading discrete frequencies.
You had your
It's
hand up.
cumulative. It's, Verizon has 2 whip Omni antennas right now. They're
Right.
slated to change them to panel. AT&T has the panel antennas. When the guy was here, I happened to be here when he was measuring, and it's measuring cumulative everything here on the site. It's not solely isolating AT&T's antennas, it's
I
what's
see.
existent.
So AT&T, that was the question. AT&T does presently have
They have 3 panel,
sector. Okay,
Yep.
all right.
and Verizon is the Omni whips,
Okay.
2 of them.
So,
Currently.
just to make this point again, we do not have the information that we asked for. We can't make a decision tonight about this, but in an effort to move it forward and bring it to a place where we can leave off and get to the rest of the items on our agenda, are there any comments that any of the members of the board would like to make about the process at this point? Any observations based on what you've heard tonight?
Well, I was very interested to hear what Bob had to say, and I look forward to getting a response from our county council as to where it go, if we were to sign it or not sign it, both those scenarios, what would happen as under our contract if we didn't sign it, and then if we did sign it, what is the process that actually, are we done at that point and we have no more say or not? So I definitely want to find that out, and I definitely want the numbers that we originally asked for. And then I think we can go from there.
Bill, Anita, you explicitly asked them for the previous numbers, right?
Correct, and it's unfortunate that this report came tonight, because it really doesn't give anybody a chance to process it and read it. And what's important is kind of layperson terms for us, because none of us are engineers. I recognize some of these numbers. I've had a chance to read through it now. The existing, I think, is in here, and then the cumulative, but, I'm not gonna say that. I was here walking around with the guy in the firehouse and in the clinic when he was doing it. I believe the numbers on some of these back pages are the existing, but I'm not.
I guess my question is, though, we
So
asked them
we
once for these numbers, we
specifically
didn't
asked,
get them. We're
very
gonna ask them again, and
specifically.
hope this time we're gonna get them.
Existing and proposed,
Okay.
cumulative.
Would it be possible to have like a subcommittee on this that could be gathering more information to help with your decision-making? Because I'm so sorry that you're in this position. It's a very, my heart goes out to you. This is just not a good thing for you to have to deal with, I don't think. I would hate to be in your position. And I would like to just, see if there wouldn't be some way to come up with some more information and some more suggestions that might be helpful with the subcommittee.
How do people feel about that?
Well, yeah, I think if you and AT&T would collaborate and form a subcommittee, that'd be great.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have equal balance.
I have some comments. I'll address Mary Beth's question. I don't know what you mean by a subcommittee. You want some of us to now
Well, what we
take
did
more time on this?
in the past, in 2000 and 2005, was to have
I remember that.
right? It was whoever from the board and then some people from the community together.
That might be useful when we get to that point, but I think that the first thing for us to do is to be back at this table with the information that we've asked for. And then we can be talking about something specific. Right now, we're all just speculating.
Well, would you be then, if they gave you the information between now and next meeting, would you be acting on whether or not to sign by next meeting?
We wouldn't be acting on anything until the next meeting.
And everything we do is public.
Pardon?
Everything we do is public.
Right, but I mean, then if you took an action to sign, it, according to my understanding, it would be all over.
Well, hopefully we'll have some more information about that too, but you're certainly welcome to come to the meeting and exercise as much influence over the decision-making process as you can. I'm not sure it would be productive for us to spend additional time. We've heard, and I think most of the members of the board, if not all, understand what your position is on this. So that's one really big consideration for us, but it's not the only consideration.
And just one more, but for instance, I'm not sure, have you all had a chance to look at the liability issues here that are not with AT&T, that are not with Lyle, but are with the fire board?
Well, it's already been established that we're afraid of a lawsuit, but I haven't looked at that.
Not by AT&T, other liability.
Oh, other lawsuits.
Do you want to?
I do have some comments. I'm going to go back to something I said in the last meeting. If you don't like cell phones, turn them off. Listen to me. I have the floor, please. I actually am not sure whether the way the radiation that comes from cell towers or cell phones are good, bad, or indifferent. I have not seen yet what the precautionary limit is. I haven't found it. I can't find it anywhere. Likewise, you look at all the studies that have been done, they don't show harmful effects. You can't find ones that show what the precautionary threshold is. I haven't found it. I haven't found a number. Well, I haven't seen it in a study. So there's that kind of thing that would be helpful to me, is if I could see that. There's been lots of conversation about why is AT&T doing this. Well, go across your community and look at how many of your friends and neighbors drive down the road with their cell phone. How many of them get out at the community center and text, or look up Google, or look up MapQuest on their cell phones? It is in this community. Our president 2 weeks ago went to northern Michigan on a pitch that we've got to build out our infrastructure, an investment in our infrastructure, and the core message that day was what? High bandwidth for internet. So put that in the hopper. Now, we have a contract, and it's worded something along the lines of when requests come up, approval is to not be unreasonably withheld. I don't have the exact language, but it's something along those lines. My speculation, I'm not a lawyer, my speculation is that if that then did go to a complaint, a legal complaint, that the FCC standard would be what would be ruled on, and of course, in this case, this would be way under that. That then brings to me another operative issue that Bob brought up, which is, do we want to downgrade the service? Do we want to have a new assessment on tax bill? Or do we want to stay with the cell towers? So I want to remind us that it isn't as simple as we say no, then everything's fine. It isn't fine. It isn't that simple. And it goes back to what I said last time. We're all in this together. The community got into this. I wouldn't characterize it as a mistake. It was just a decision that was made many years ago. And now we see, kind of a situation that we're in. So I want to remind us all that this isn't you come here, tell us to turn it off, go away, and then everything's fine. It isn't fine. We as a community have a challenge on our hands. And I want everybody to be mindful of that. I want you to, as I say this, I said it last time, I don't own a cell phone. It isn't clear to me they're safe. I can't find anything that says they're not. But I'm going to practice the precautionary principle. And I do. Last meeting, as we were waiting to assemble, one of the people who was worried about their granddaughter playing cell phone rang. So you, in essence, really come to us saying, we don't like this, we want you to withhold the signature. That, to me, means there's a reasonable probability that either the towers go away, AT&T picks up their marbles and goes to another piece of property in our community, by the way. It won't go away. Or we have to deal with our income structure. And we've got to have that, we've got to be mindful about that. So I want us to be really clear about that. We do have the power to not sign. We also, as a community, have to step up and say then, okay, what do we want our level of service to be? And how are we going to pay for that if we don't like to change what it is today? Now, as a board member, this isn't the only thing that comes onto our plate. We've got emergency egress and access issues. We have one board member, me, who has put near 50 to 100 hours into the stabilization of Surfers Overlook because of the access and egress issues. Emergency access and egress. So what this boils down to is I'm unwilling to take on this cause, especially when people who want me to do that turn on their cell phones. Not everybody, Mary Beth, across the community. And my bet is if we put an advisory measure on the poll, I don't think people want their cell service to degrade. I'm not advocating for that, but that's the reality of it. So anybody, if you're going to come here and do this, you got to be aware the consequences are deeper than just, you told us to stop, you go away and live happily ever after. It isn't that simple. There's a lot of issues and priorities that get dealt with here. So I think there's others that really, anyway, so just want you to understand that as you go away and think about this and process this.
Any other comments here at the table?
I just have one brief one, and that's every one of us in this room, except for this guy, has got gray hair. You go out and ask those kids that are 18 years old, do you want to give up your cell phone? They're going, no.
Oh, yeah, you do. I see it.
Good for you, but I do.
You do.
But the point is, we represent a little different slice of the population of Bolinas. We don't represent those kids that are 18 years old. On the other hand, of course, you have to think about the 5 or 6 year olds that may be getting damaged by this. But I just worry that we need to have a more broad perspective across the population.
Ellen.
Well, it seems to me so incredibly significant that these firefighters, what he talked about, above and beyond what you said, that there's this huge organization that's saying, we want the precautionary principle. I mean, if that isn't significant, I don't know what is. And if any of the people who were if you were to take a poll, if any of them read, the things that Mary Beth has, the testing that's been done, and the people who have taken an active interest in finding out if it's healthy, I mean, if they read it, they would vote against this happening. I'm sorry.
Are you talking about the smokers and the drinkers? I mean, they know,
okay, you're right.
But you know what I mean? There are a lot of people that know the dangers of things and they do it anyway.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That is true. But you're adults, and you have the capacity to make a decision about this.
Yeah.
That's right, we do. And you heard my considerations on that.
There is also a small group of people in this town who are here because up until these last few years this was a safe place, away from the pollution, away from the electromagnetic radiation. They are unable to be at meetings like this because of these lights, because of the electromagnetic radiation in this room. And I would just like to remind you that that is a proportion of the population of Bolinas who are here because they cannot live anywhere else and who are now being driven out of Bolinas, and where is there for them to go? So I would like you to also remember those people who are a sizable minority in this town.
I'm really glad that this issue actually brought me here tonight so I could really see this fine board of you people and appreciate you for your work. And I gather that you do have a lot on your plate, so I do really thank you. And I do care about this issue, that's why I'm here. My dad died of brain cancer. In 2000. His oncologist would not use a cell phone. When I called, as an emergency, trying to reach him, he would use a paid phone to call me back. And he actually linked the proximity of a cell phone tower to where my dad lived as a possibility. And this was in 2000, so the cell phone towers weren't as beefed up as they are now. And I did some research back then. There I was, cell phones seemed like a really cool thing to have. And one of the major cancer associations, very cautiously but very clearly, came out with a statement that cell phone towers might very well benefit to development of cancers. And it was actually a much clearer statement than that. And later on in my years, in my work, I tried to forget about those facts and forget about the possibility of my dad, possibly having gotten sicker because of the cell phone tower. And, I used my cell phone just like anybody else. And I'm actually really grateful to people like Mary Beth, who reminds me of what the possible causes are, who gets me thinking, so I get on the computer and do my own research. And yes, a lot of the information that I've heard here, I also came across in my own research, and I'm one of those people, and I know that there's more people like me of my generation. We actually want to be stopped from using our cell phones. It's a weird statement to say, and even if most of us are using cell phones, even if, President Obama walked in here with his cell phone, that doesn't mean that it's okay to use them. I seriously, when I moved to Bolinas, I was actually, at first where I lived, I had cell phone reception, and then I moved, and there was no cell phone reception. And I was actually relieved, because there's something addictive about it. There's the cell phone and it's just so easy, and now you can get more access on the internet and stuff through your cell phone. It's not that because we're using it, we actually really want to. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. I hope that I am. There's just, if something is really accessible and easy, and there's so much advertising making it seem cool and popular to use it, it really doesn't mean that it's safe or that we really want to use it.
I don't disagree with that for a minute.
And so I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Well, just in terms of general input, personal computers, laptop computers have a central processing unit that is operating up at 2 gigahertz and is sitting in your lap. If you use a computer as opposed to a cell phone near your head, it's like if you're giving away cell phones and computer. In other words, and there are places in town that have Wi-Fi. There are individuals that have Wi-Fi. Okay, it's like it's prevalent. I'm not saying it's either good or bad. I'm not sure I like the future any more than anybody, but nobody's getting out of here alive.
Okay, well, this issue will be back on the agenda at the March 28th meeting.
Just one more quick thing. Please, I just wanted to respond to you, David, because we thought this through a lot the last, in 2000 and 2005, and we did think through the needs of the firehouse for the rental money, and we thought, okay, if the cell towers stayed here and you got that income, it would be worth it if we could, because for one thing, that benefited the whole community. It still breaks my heart about exposing the people who work here all the time. But the second thing was, if it were with the fire district, the community would have some input into the levels of radiation. And so we conceded that we needed to have at least some cell coverage. They were already here, you were already benefiting, and we were saying, okay, please just keep it at this level. That's what we did say, David. We did think that through.
Well, you didn't think through what would happen if the revenue went away.
I'm sorry, but what we were saying is AT&T would be happy to have coverage here, period. And the fact that coverage would be increasing, we even thought through that, and we said that's why we wanted to keep the levels of radiation the same. You benefit, we keep the risk.
We all benefit.
Kind of.
And I will just share with those of you that are here in the community what I have said from the time I've come onto the board. I've always been anxious about relying on that source of income. I don't think it's a good place to be.
It is.
And so it's why I did the modeling to look at how would we pay for our engines so that it would help the board, and as we have to take this dialogue further into the community, we can have a mindful and rational conversation about what's it going to take to make it go the way it goes, especially if that revenue goes away. And it isn't just would necessarily go away because somebody says turn it off. There could be technology changes.
There could be what?
There could be technology changes.
Technology what?
Technology changes.
Where it's no longer needed.
Where AT&T doesn't need that tower anymore. That could happen before the term of our contract. What do we do as a community? That's something that I have surfaced at the board. So this is not a black or white situation.
So we're going to continue
Yeah.
this
Thank
item.
you.
I think we're going around in circles now.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
So moving on to the next item on the agenda, it's a discussion item only in terms of an expression on our part about capping existing EMF levels. So does anybody have any thoughts on what such a resolution?
I still want to know what they are.
Yeah.
That's what I said last time. I want to know what they are.
So that's next week too, huh?
Well,
Next month.
Ask a question and maybe ask Ian to clarify it a little bit for me, since I work here. When we talk about, and we've talked about this, the worst case scenario, okay? We talk about all the antennas here, including the ones we need to function operationally. And it's my understanding that the cell tower antennas, and this is getting to what the current levels are, when they just come around and do readings, our antennas are not transmitting, usually, when that happens. So I'm wondering if that's an artificially lower reading. Now, I completely, we've talked about this a bunch here. This is what we deal with. Every firefighter, whatever this IAFF thing is about the cell towers, that's fine, but as firefighters, as police, as first responders, we deal with antennas on our bodies, on our vehicles, every day. Every day. And we know we're dealing with that. You know, when I key a mic and that radio is on my hip, the antenna's right here. So, and the antennas that got left here on this tower that are now a second floor because of the negotiations that didn't go through with the Mira debacle, is exposing us at a higher level up there. So my question, Ian, is if we were to get existing levels, now granted, you know, whenever the radio squawks, this antenna is transmitting, correct? And it's the whip antenna that's on the lower portion of the lattice tower. If we were to get existing levels, wouldn't that need to take into account worst case scenario? My understanding of that from years back was everything on at the same time.
Correct. There's two types of surveys that could be done. The first was where they walk around with a meter and measure environmental levels. And the second is a computer model where they take the model of radio, the manufacturer and brand of antenna, and they run it through a computer and say, okay, with everything on, given the radiation pattern and the amount of energy being pumped into this antenna, how much is actually coming out? And so there are two types of studies that can be done. One is an environmental measurement, and that's happenstance. If it's not transmitting at that moment, you don't get any energy off of it. And that goes to the question of why the 6-minute or 30-minute sampling window is to try to give you a better idea of what it looks like over a period of time. The worst case scenario is the computer model where they actually say, based on the antennas you have and the radios you have, if everything were turned on, what would it look like? And that, I believe, in fact, I'm certain, is what we got the last time, 2005, because we got numbers, we had to feed them manufacturers and radio types so that they could push that into their model and kick it out.
That's 6%.
Correct.
And you have that data?
We have that from 2005. We have parts of it. We can't seem to assemble the entire report, and I don't know we ever got it. I think we may have gotten pieces.
I don't believe we got it. I have a one-page. When we took under consideration, I don't know if it was back as far as 2005, frankly. I think it was June of 2010 when Verizon made the request to go from Omni antennas to panel. We requested this exact same information that we requested of Lyle for tonight. And what we got, and what Ian has looked at and we've been looking at, is what we believe is a computer model of all the antennas here on the top. And what we took at that time as an existing level. That's what, as a district, we use as an existing level. So we have that, but in regards to getting to an existing level, you know, I believe either we try and find this report that was done by somebody or another, or we get our own report done. You know, and I don't know what the cost or what the procedure for that is, but this is what we've been using as our existing levels. And
it would be very interesting to see how the Lyle information that they developed their projections with compares to this information right here, but also I think it'd be really important that it be in the same units.
Right.
And not something that requires a technical extrapolation.
Right. Yeah, it's unfortunate that, frankly, that they didn't talk to us before tonight, because I would have told them this wasn't going to fly as it exists. So, but this is the only thing we have currently for what's existing, and I have copies of it if you want it.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question, Ian. When you say worst case, I don't really understand what that means.
If every transmitter on the property were turned on at any given moment. So if the fire radio were on and all channels of the cell sites were on for both Verizon and AT&T and the state parks antenna, if everything were turned on at once, which I would say almost never happens.
Right.
But that would give us if everything were turned on at once, what the maximum exposure at that moment would be.
Okay, and that's the computerized
The
model.
only way I could see in reality of getting that would be a computer model. Otherwise, you'd have to coordinate everybody to, okay, now click and turn everything on, and that's not going to happen.
Okay. And that's what you feel like you have. And so the next measurement will be using the same model, the same.
They use that terminology in the report, worst case scenario, in this recent report we just got tonight. So, and they were to take every existing antenna.
And who did that?
EBI,
Who is EDI?
it's a third-party hired company to come do that. I actually walked around with him
Uh-huh.
here when he did the readings, and the readings in the firehouse were extremely low.
And hired by whom?
AT&T.
Uh-huh.
It's not, we're not obligated to pay for that, neither is the county. That's incumbent upon AT&T to pay for that report.
EBI.
EBI.
Yeah, EBI.
Yeah.
I feel like we don't have enough information to even really consider trying to draft a resolution tonight. So let's continue that along with the continuation of the item on the use permit application. So, any final comments before we move on to other business? Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Come
much.
again.
For other issues too, we like to have an audience.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.